Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on investing in the post COVID 19 world. What's next for investors? As we saw in the recent past, the Indian equity markets recovered from the COVID shock much earlier than expected. As I'm talking to you, the stock markets have recovered by almost 50% since the March lows. This makes many investors think about the next investment moves. Are the markets going to continue to remain bullish? What should be the Indian strategy that needs to be adopted for the post COVID 19 world? We are no longer talking about the crisis. We are looking forward to create a strategy that will help us to create wealth. And to answer all these questions, we have an expert, Jasprit Singh Arora, Chief Investment Officer at Research and Ranking. Jasprit has more than 15 years of experience across leadership positions in leading companies such as Angel Broking, Anand Rathi, Systematics Shares and Securities. In his career span of almost 15 years, he has worked across various domains such as institutional research, equity research, investment banking, and corporate finance. It's an honor to have him today. Thank you, Jasprit, for joining us. Over to you.
Thanks, Jigna, for that introduction, and good evening to everyone. So, as Jigna highlighted, what we're going to be discussing are largely the five aspects. What are the lessons that we can draw from the recent occurrences in the market? By recent, I mean in the last decade or so. What are the things to do while we are investing? While we are still coming out of this crisis, what are the opportunities that we see? What's the outlook, and what's the food for thought? Okay, the first one. So, what are the lessons that we can draw from the last? I shouldn't be using the word pandemic, but the last crisis, which happened in 2008. And this is a very interesting chart. So please bear with me, and I need your full attention on this. Yeah, so what happened in 2008 was the market crashed and it pulled back, and then it went into two different phases, and this is exactly what's happening now. So I have kind of juxtaposed what's happened so far, what's likely to happen. Again, it's what's likely to happen, our best case a guesstimate as of today, and it's a which has a very high probability. So the last in 2008, the market crashed 50% between Jan 8 to December 2008, right? And this time around, it had crashed 38%. The difference was last time it took 12 months to knock off that 50%. This time it was less than 2 months. From Feb 13 to 23rd March is I mean not even 40 days. So that was the kind of brutality that happened this time around. The pullback last time in 2008 took almost 22 months, right? From the Nifty index of 3,000 to be precise, it took more than 22 months for it to recover that number of 6,000. This time, the entire pullback has happened in 4 months. But directionally, if you see the 1:2 ratio, the fall in 12 months, pullback in 22 months, 1:2, is largely the same, which is fall in 2 months and pullback in 4 months, right? So just taking a lesson from the past, the market consolidated around the 6,000 range in between 2010, mid of 2010 till early 2013. Right, it just about was only up like 5-7% from 5,300 to 6,000. Largely a very 5 to 7%. It didn't do much if I were to use those words. And after that, it just took off, and it took off like crazy. From 6,000, it went up to 8,400 from Feb of 2013 till Feb of 2015. And this is precisely what our sense is at this stage. Next 5 months is more going to be a consolidation zone. When I'm saying consolidation, it's more at the benchmark levels, like a Nifty or a Sensex. or some of the larger indices if one were to look at it. While the broader breadth of the market will definitely be much better. And we're already seeing it in the mid and small cap, the strength that the mid and small cap are showing, or the advanced decline that's happening, the volumes that are happening, you can clearly see that, right? That's it's far greater participation in stocks beyond the top 100, right? So our sense is, and we'll get to specific numbers when we get to subsequent slide, why we are referring to those numbers, what's the basis for that. Our sense is the market should be closer to 12,000, 12,200 by the time we end this current calendar year. And after that, right, just after Diwali and from there onwards, once, and why that period? Couple of things. One, obviously the festive season. Second, the pandemic is expected to settle down globally as well as in India by then. And the vaccine on a commercial basis should be widely available globally. I was just um, told by my MD Manish that the vaccine that Serum Institute is developing is they claim they are just 73 days away, and that's kind of just coinciding with that early part of November, and which is again why we're saying post that. See, the moment you get a vaccine, the market will be in a far comfortable stronger position than even what it might be today, because then you know that there is a cure, a proven cure. Beyond that, our sense is next 12 months thereafter, it should be definitely above 13,000, 13,500 is what we're looking at as a broader Nifty index. Okay, so what I referred to in that consolidation zone, even if we were to be there, it doesn't mean stocks would not do anything, right? To prove that, the last time market was in a consolidation zone, which I mentioned was October 10 to Feb 13. There were over 25 stocks which gave 100% return. There were over 60 stocks which gave over 50% return, right? And it is across sectors, be it consumption, be it BFSI, auto, pharma, and miscellaneous. So since we are in that space or in that segment where we try to identify the top 22 stocks to our clients, and it's in that sense a fairly concentrated portfolios. All we would need or try and attempt would be to get 2 or 3 out of those 25 stocks, 2 or 3 out of those 60 stocks, and the rest could be more of those 10, 15, 20% average basket kind of. If we get that 35, 40% or more over a less than 2 years period is definitely doable. And thereafter, obviously the growth engine picks up, and obviously over a three-year period, one is looking at a combined aggregate portfolio, kind of doubling is where we are trying to position ourselves. So in that period, the bold ones is what I highlighted in consumption, that even those are the large caps, Godrej, Marico, ITC, Asian, Titan, even the large caps delivered as high as 76% up to 75, 80% return, while mid caps was obviously delivering those handsome 100, 200% returns. Bajaj Finance, Bajaj Finserv, TCS, Sun Pharmaceuticals, HCL Technologies. So it's not just that mid caps were shining in that period, and this is just the sample. As I said, there are over 60 stocks, and this is just a sample of some of those. Maybe 35, 40 of those 60 stocks. Now moving on to the phase which I mentioned, top right, the bull run which India saw, where the index moved up from 6,000 to 8,400, a 40% jump. In that period, what happened was 160 stocks gave 100% return, while 240 stocks gave 50% return, right? So you can clearly see the equation in the previous slide where 25 and 60, right? So 25 moved up to 160, and 60 moved up to 240. So that's the kind of number of stocks which went up, or which gave those handsome, fancy returns in that period of February 2013 to February 15, which is a 2-year period. And if you get a good 100% return from a couple of stocks, we're not saying at a portfolio level, which you get off, which even you get on a half of your portfolio, then I think overall returns, averaging about 60-70% over a 2-year period, and as I said, a 100% return over a 3-year period should not be difficult. Again, some of the large caps during that phase, Britannia, TVS, Bharat Forge, Eicher, Bajaj Finance again did really well. But the starting point here in that phase was clearly it was mid caps all the way. They outnumbered large caps by a big margin. So some of them continued their run from the previous 2 years, and they continued. So they did well between 2011 and 12, right, the calendar years, and they continued in 13, 14, and early part of 15. And they were stocks like Cera Sanitaryware, Britannia Industries, Astral Poly, Page Industries. So that's the kind of pharma again came up, was again the shining armor there, where you had like some almost every second stock in pharma doing well. So what besides kind of sharing what happened in the last phase when such an event happened, it is also kind of giving us the flavor of the sectors that did well and the sector rotation, and we draw lessons from it, and we kind of use that when we are building a portfolio in the current context for our clients. Let me move forward to the fact that what was the print in April, May, and what's the print now. So April, May, the print was that the Nifty EPS would decline over 20%. The GDP would decline over 7 to 9% for the current financial year. While, as we moved in July and August, based on the results that have come, it looks like, the Nifty EPS is going to decline only anywhere between 5% to 10%. Right, and the GDP degrowth would be lesser than 5%. This again is vetted by global agencies like IMF. So that's the kind of a texture or the change in color that has happened in between May and July, and couple of reasons. One is obviously there was this pent up demand which kind of unleashed once the unlock happened. Second was there was a lot of resilience which was shown by the corporates while cutting their fixed cost, and that took everyone by a big surprise. That's the kind of extra flap that was there, and they could easily prune it down. And lastly, obviously, market obviously there are occasions when it moves between extremes. So in April and May, it was moving in that extreme bearish zone, and therefore those were the numbers that were getting thrown by some of the market participants. Moving on, everyone would be very keen to know what's been the color of 1Q results so far. So Nifty stocks, the Nifty 50 has declined, revenue has declined 30%, 29% to be precise on a YY basis. EBITDA has declined only 6%, while the expectation was 11%. The profit has declined again only 26%, right? Again, the expectation was the decline of 35%. Right. See, what has to be kept in mind is in periods when the revenue declines 10, 20, 30%, the net profit decline is far higher. Right. In the current situation, because as I said, the kind of discipline or rationalization of cost exercised by corporate India, the profit decline was far lower, which was a very healthy takeaway and a positive surprise. 50% of the companies out of Nifty, they reported a beat on consensus. Point number two, the Bharat, which is the rural India, was outperformed the urban India, which is quite evident in the way some of the sectors, and which we'll see in the coming slide, some of the segments and sectors which delivered in terms of the capacity utilizations. The other point just want to highlight is healthcare and tech stood out tall. They were the companies in these segments that gave very good numbers, and FMCG and chemicals was right behind. So this is, what's the, again, looking at, again, a larger segment of beyond those sectors that I mentioned. So as I said, pharma and chemicals is what did well. What besides obviously IT and insurance, FMCG being in that neutral zone. What, and this is the left side chart, a table I'm referring to. What did not do well as much was some of the spaces like NBFC cement, and retail and metals, which obviously is what some of the discretionary expenditure for the consumers or even for the corporates, auto, paints, electricals. But and I'll show you the statistics, how it is looking like today. It is far better. You look at the right side table, again, the companies, corporates delivering either in line or beating the expectations was far higher. What's important to highlight here is this is a one-off quarter. This quarter happened. These kind of quarter happens. For example, I've not seen such a quarter in my 17 years of career. This happens, once in 2 decades. Even the worst quarter in 2008, 2009, in the last crisis was better than this, right? So please don't take any takeaway or conclude. Please don't draw any conclusions from this. The only conclusion to be drawn is it is far better than what it was expected at the start of April or early May. And the also relevant point is that if one is looking at opportunities, it is also from these spaces only, because the stocks may have still not recovered to where they were. There might still be a gap, and therefore, as long as they are fundamentally good balance sheets, led by good sound promoters, there's no reason why one should not be looking at this space going forward. So this is what I was referring to, that the print in July and August in terms of utilization rates is far better than what it was in the first quarter average, and slightly better than what it was in the month of June, right? So two-wheelers are doing excess of 75% utilizations, four-wheelers are excess of 60%, tractors was always healthy at 100%, FMCG, pharma, the shining lot, 90-100%, even jewelry is doing as much as 60%, innerwear is 80 to 90%. Paints is now inching up to more than 75% utilization, and consumer durables, obviously, a lot of demand for appliances, and that's doing well. Cement, steel, economy facing, again, tells you what's the level of activity at the ground level, whether be it in terms of housing, construction, infrastructure, industrial capex, and that's a very good barometer. If it's 80-85%, can't give you a better signal than this, that things are normalizing as we are moving every week, every month. So what's the events that we are keeping a close eye? See, earlier there was a horizontal lockdown, and therefore you're waiting for the PM, or somebody from the ministry, from the cabinet coming out and giving the announcement, the unlock, how it's going to be phased out. But now that it's already been done, and it's been almost 2 months, it is now those micro level lockdowns that and which we call vertical lockdowns, that one will have to keep an eye. So as I understand, parts of Bihar, parts of West Bengal, parts of most of UP, right, and so that is where lockdown still exists, either for almost the entire week, or it's only on particular days or on a weekend. So it differs from state to state, in some cases city to city. So that's one. Second is obviously the final opening up, which is I wouldn't call that final, but let's say the second last, which is the food courts, entertainment zones, the restaurants, bars, multiplex, gyms, and the clubs, which is expected to open next month based on the progress that we make. And lastly, the last would be, I think, the schools and colleges and the local trains across cities. That would obviously, once that happens, then that would be like giving a very positive sign that things are far in control. Outside India, US presidential elections would be a key event to watch out for. Just more on headline basis. It doesn't matter beyond a point. And in India, we have an election in Bihar. I don't know how it's going to be conducted, but yeah, that's scheduled for November, and that will be something that will be keenly watched. Okay, yeah, this is where we do some number crunching, and our sense is the Nifty EPS is expected to decline, and this is again with a very high um, um, predictability, or if you want to call it accuracy, that one want to use the word, versus if you had asked me the similar thing in April or May, it would have been very low. So we are fairly confident that this year Nifty EPS, the decline would be anywhere between 5 to 10%, right? And therefore we have taken an average of 8%. However, the next year, the jump should be equally sharp, right? And it should be anywhere between 600 to 625 to 630, 640 type of a number. Again, and this is just not 1 year of a low base. There are multiple years of either no growth or low growth that's been there, which is leading to that. And obviously, if you juxtaposes with the fact that current year GDP decline is expected to be 5%, next year expected to move up 8% or more, then it kind of tallies with that. If I combine that with the long-term P average of 18 to 22 times, the Nifty range, the fair pricing that we would want to call it from a 1 year perspective, happens to be between 11,000 to 13,400. So clearly means that at 11,000, the market would be at the lower range, and therefore no reason why we should fret this number where the market is right now, and not look at opportunity. So our sense is use every dip to buy rather than trying to look at the index. And let me just highlight some of the things that we want to keep here, and we want to leave our audience as a takeaway. So point number one, use every dip to buy, right? What it means is starting from now 11,500 till 10,500, right? If market were to go down that way, use every dip to buy, right? And not just wait for only 11,000, only 10,500, and then try, because you may, I mean, last webinar we did was in July, market was 11,000. The previous one we did was in June, market was 10,000, and the one prior to that it was much lower. So if at all investors were waiting for that number which they had in mind, they would have easily lost out on 20-30% by now. Stock specific approach, just identify which stocks you like, businesses you would like to own, and just the moment you get your price, index is 11 half, 10 half, 11, just look at that particular stock. Once it comes into your buy zone, that's the time to latch onto it. Keep a long-term approach. No price for guessing that. Has to be kept in mind. Stay focused. We have lots of information overload. So just stay focused. And lastly, let's not try and time the market. So this is done best by hedge funds, long short funds, the FIIs, day traders, right? Positional holders. We are not there. We are not in that business. Our business is for investment. And if we're saying we'll sell now and buy at 10,500 or 10,000, very high chance we may go wrong. 9 out of 10 times we'll go wrong. 1 out of 10 obviously we might go right, but let's not use that as a yardstick to use a reason to do it again and again. This is a very interesting quotation from one of the top 10 gurus in the world, Peter Lynch, and this is what has happened in the last 2 months. As I said, markets moved up from 9,500 to 11,500 in the last 2.5 months. I mean, he says far more money has been lost by investors preparing for corrections or trying to time the market or trying to anticipate correction than has been lost in corrections themselves. So the market moved down from Feb 13 to March 23rd, exactly 40 days. It moved down by 39%, right? And it moved up in less than 2 months. ever since, between May and now it's moved. It moved up 20%. After that, it moved another 25%. Right? If only we were just waiting for corrections, we would have lost the last 25%. Right? So it's far more brutal to just trying to time the market in that sense. Okay, just gonna briefly showcase our two products. One is the MPO, which we highlight as a mispriced opportunity. We had highlighted Hero as the idea there. We highlighted this and we recommended this to our clients in the month of mid-April, and the price was 1800, and we had given solid fundamental reasons why we were backing that with a target price of 2,500, and we got that returns for our investors in less than 2 months. So the reasons were very simple. Strong rural presence. Hero is the king in rural. It's also the king in the entry level bikes. Market share 50% India by far. I mean, it's a market leader. The input costs were lower at that stage. Steel, metal prices, right? Even crude was very low, and the end use the client or the user would also be having that benefit. Balance sheet was very strong. Net cash company, free cash flow yield of 7%, zero debt, attractive dividend yield, and finally the valuations undemanding 11x. Can't get a better multiple than that. The 40% lower than the 10-year average of 18 times. So was a no-brainer from a large cap, semi-discretionary, a very good promoter pedigree. Had delivered in the past. We liked it, and ever since we have been using more such examples or ideas to make money under MPO, which we have been doing consistently. This is where with the case where we exited, wanted to highlight. Deepak Nitrite was a winner and continues to be a winner for us. Was a small cap when we recommended it about a year and a half back. Is a mid cap now. It used to be less than 4,000 crore market cap. It's almost a 9,000 crore market cap. I think more than that as we speak today. It's one of those players who are in that niche specialty chemicals category. And as everyone knows, the opportunity for Indian companies is very high. After and it has increased after the China plus one strategy has opened up. And now, even now, when government is now looking at giving some incentives to this sector for companies who putting up projects to, and they're plan to give incentives for additional revenue. Deepak's been there, doing very well in the last 2 decades. But the last 10 years, they have ramped up very well in all their products, in IPA. And all the downstream products that they have launched or they want to launch. So it's fairly diversified in terms of product portfolio, technical skills. And let me just highlight to you the bottom slide where look at the revenue mix geographically. Asia is where the bulk of the revenue comes from, followed by Europe, and US is very less in that sense, which is a very vulnerable market and tantamount to some of the pricing discipline or the pricing imposition that gets pushed sometimes. So fairly diversified geographically, and so is on the revenue side, where the end use is either the current industry, the agrochem, the fuel, or the pharma side. You look at the return on capital ever since FY19, it's been in double digits, went up to 35%. And our sense is it's going to be about 25% for the next 5 years. Similar is the case for ROE. It's going to remain above 20% for the next 5 years. Debt equity is going to be hardly anything. Very in control. 0.3, 0.2, 0.1 time. Free cash flow generation very healthy. 600, 700 crores or thereabouts per annum is the potential that we look at it, that the company can throw over the next consistently over the next 5 years. And if it's doing that, and as long as the valuations are low double digit or high single digit, no reason why we will not continue to back this name. We have been having it in our portfolio, and we continue to like it. Okay, so why we choose what we choose, and what's the current positioning. So we on our 2022 stocks, kind of a portfolio basket, our current mix is 60-40 between large and mid caps. We've moved in favor of mid caps in the last 2 months. We were initially, in fact, 3 months, we were initially at 25%. We improved it to took it up to 33, and now we are at 40% in most of our portfolios. And the ceiling is 50, and the moment we think things are far more in control, risk on trade is there to continue, we will increase it to 50%, which is where the mid and small cap ceiling comes into place. And this is our current positioning, 60-40. In terms of how do we see the medium term and long term? What are the themes? Some of them are obviously the rural exposure, crude price. Is there a tailwind? Does it have exposure to some of the lesser affected states or cities in terms of COVID? The EPS decline should be a bulk of the company should be in zones where the EPS decline is less than 20%. And why 20? Obviously, we expect the Nifty EPS decline to be far lesser than 20%. So we have that ceiling there. In terms of long term, our long term themes remain, per capita income doubling, sunrise sector like a healthcare, retail, insurance, technology as a disruptor, very important. This is what has come up in the last 3 or 4 months. And can the company deliver revenue growth higher than the nominal GDP growth? And this is what we call our ABC analysis that we do on our stocks. We try and have an even mix between all weather, momentum, and circle of opportunity. Is the company falling in either of these three categories? The first one is our classic compounders, but they are little more on the boring side. Say they would grow earnings and compounding of between 10, 15, 20%. There are sectors which are stocks which are more on the momentum side, which we again have about 40% weightage, 40 to 50%, which are more on that 20 to 30% earnings and stock price growth compounding. And last is opportunities in some of the distress cases. This is where we, as I said, there is this opportunity, like the aviation, the entertainment, right? Some of the beaten down sectors, or some of the turnaround spaces has been make companies if continue to make loss, but is now expected to come back into profit. So that is where we have allocated about 10%, up to 10% of our portfolio. So put that everything, 20% is on an average level per annum, definitely doable. These are some of the qualitative and quantitative filters. It's a 10-point matrix which we follow both for qualitative and quantitative, and we try and have at least a 7 or a more a passing number for under both of these before we say this stock is fit to qualify to be recommended in a client's portfolio. This is how the current color of our portfolios is looking like. The largest exposure that we have is towards consumer discretionary, and which includes auto, which is about 25%. It is closely followed by some of the spaces or sectors which are in limelight and are doing very well. And our sense is it will continue to do well for the entire current financial year, which is chemical, pharma, agrochem, and possibly even thereafter. That occupies about 20%. Staples, FMCG is 15%, and these are the spaces where we are overweight compared to the benchmark Nifty. While economy facing is again 12%, kind of neutral weight. What we are slightly underweight or is a space which maybe like IT, media, telecom. While a larger underweight would be to a sector like the banking and financial services, where the pain continues, and our senses maybe it will be there for maybe 2 more quarters, and it won't be before January before we think this number would come back to closer to 25%, where we were about 6 months back. So I think for the next four odd months, good to be around that 15% zone, given the pressures and the moratorium restructuring, ambiguity, etc., etc. So this is where we we end our sessions typically, which is a food for thought. What we try and leave an idea or a thought in our investors' mind to think about and kind of leave them something with, so that they would remember this session. So what had happened in the last 2 or 3 months was there was so much of information that was coming in, and one had to just club it, either it was a negative or a positive. um, and depending on how you would react or absorb, or transmit that to other people, it would reflect in your behavior when it comes to investing in the market. So you had far more negatives. I've just tried to highlight the some of them which have been there, which is India was amongst top 10, then became top 5, now is amongst top 3, and possibly will obviously be would probably be a number 2 as well in a month or two. But that's about it. I mean, it cannot occupy a headline, anything beyond that. Number 2, all those top 10 cities being affected, likely to delay recovery, GDP expected to decline. Tension with the neighboring countries, and government of India banning the Chinese apps and stuff like that. All of that was obviously claiming headline. At the same time, what was happening globally was a company like Apple, which increased its market cap over 40% from 1.3 trillion dollars to 2 trillion dollars during the period when market had crashed globally. And it's almost as big as some of the big economies in the world today. Reliance during the same time almost doubled its market cap between March and now, from 7 lakh crores to 14 lakh crores. The crude obviously went down and is now settled down. Gold prices have shot up. Many global economies have pumped in money. A lot of startups got 100 crores, 1,000 crores, thousands of crores to feed start their engines. The Indian market cap overall has grown 45% from the bottom of March. We went down to less than 0.5% of 0.5 times market cap to GDP. We are about close to or above 0.75 today. We were below 0.5 at the bottom. And interest rates multi-year low. That's obviously good for an economy like India. I mean, you just go to your any bank and ask them what are the current home loan rates, and just ask them what were the rates 5 years back, 10 years back, 15 years back, and you'll be surprised you're getting the lowest rates in the last 15 years. That's the kind of interest rate environment we are currently in, and that's obviously a positive, both in terms of us getting capital, the consumers, the industrialists at a very, very affordable rate, and obviously from a re-rating perspective, because the lower the interest rates, the higher is the P, and therefore you get that re-rating benefit. So as we said, there can be many positives that can be highlighted. We have just not highlighted some of the relevant ones, and some of the ones which are thought one would can easily correlate with. So it all depends how you wanna use some of those positives to your advantage while ignoring the negatives. That's the learning, that's the lesson. That's what we try and highlight to our investors day in, day out. Our sense is that if we choose a top 100 investors, and by investors I mean the long-term investors who have invested with a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year in mind, they would have used such a behavior, such a investment psyche that they want to draw a positive out of it and use crisis as an opportunity rather than trying to fret and exit the market to their advantage. They would have been the ones who would have ended up making money and getting like 4 5 multi-baggers in their portfolios out of 2025. And that is the real idea. We wouldn't have come across people who would have noted all the negatives and are trying to exit at the top and again buying at the bottom. Very, very hard to find such kind of investors. If you would know such investors who would have done that kind of investment day in day out with high level of accuracy and consistency, we would be happy to meet and learn from such investors. We haven't come across many of those. Happy to end here and take questions. Thank you so much for your patient listening.
So we have a lot of questions floating in. The questions which I have received from many investors over here is, for someone who is a first time investor, what should be an investment strategy from here on?
Yeah, so that takes me to the slide that I showed in one of my sessions in the first couple of slides, was that the idea is to invest with a long-term perspective. That's point number one. Point number two is stay focused. Look at quality franchise. Look at the spaces that you can comfortably own. Right? No point trying to dig into a sector like a pharma or a chemical if you're not able to understand even if 30-40%, if you're able to understand 30 to 40% of that space or that sector or that stock, then please go ahead by all means and invest in that. Let's not try and do a herd mentality or a Robin Hood investing as the term is prevalent today. So one, stay focused, long-term approach, and use the opportunity to your advantage by owning franchise that you would be able to understand and you would be proud of owning over a period of time. Yeah.
So related to your answer on the same, I have one more question over here is, keeping a long-term view may, look easier said than done. When the stocks are going down, how do you manage to stay calm, and what are the top things that investors should do to create wealth in the long run?
Yeah, on days like these and months or weeks like what happened in March, April, as I said, the lesser you are away from TV channels, WhatsApp, Twitter, it's best for your portfolio. It's easier said than done, but that's obviously unless you were able to be glued on and able to react rationally, then that's obviously a far more. But that takes time. It comes with experience, and believe me, it will take at least 10 years before a seasoned investor can reach that stage. So that's clearly the way. And obviously, if you have a long term in mind, you're not investing with a 3 months, 4 months, or a 10 months perspective, and as long as you've not invested your entire money on day one, there's no reason why one should be disturbed by opportunities or a panic selling that comes. And believe me, these are the opportunities, these are the sessions where one also gets to take advantage of trying and to put in more money, which can average out and give cost to a portfolio which looks far lower than what it was when he or she started investing in month zero.
Rahul has asked this question. According to you, Jaspreet, which are the sectors that would lead the growth in the next bull run?
Okay, yeah. So we, our sense is that in terms of sectors, we are very well positioned, and our sense is chemicals, pharma, agrochemical. That's clearly up there. If you ask me, that would be my number one bucket in terms of earnings growth, resilience, in terms of ownership. That would be my number one choice. But obviously, given the limited opportunities in terms of market cap, pedigree, valuation, multiples. As I said, the amount of confidence that I can have in terms of understanding of in terms of the micro products that they would sell. Uh, Therefore, we would limit it to up to 20%. Uh, 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 Second would be consumer discretionary, without a doubt. This is where people like you and me would spend our money. Today we would the moment market would open up entirely, let's say closer to Diwali, we would be out there, people in the age bracket of 25 to 45, shopping to the extent the pocket allows in products which is around retail or low end jewelry or footwear, luggage, stationery. Those are the spaces, apparels. Those are the spaces that would clearly be up there in terms of. So top three buckets as of today would be: number one, chemical, pharma, agro; number two, discretionary, which is mostly semi-discretionary, not ultra discretionary; and the number three bucket would be FMCG. That's largely be about 60% of what we would like to own today.
So I have received very interesting question. You told me about the top three sectors. Even if you can highlight, what is your view on the banking stocks, especially the PSU stocks?
See, PSU stocks are very difficult to make money if one is looking at from a long term perspective. You might be able to, and this is more true from PSU Bank's perspective. You can look at any stock. Very difficult to. I mean, it looks undervalued, but there would be just maybe one or two names which would have made. You look at the top three PSU banks. Look at some of the best run, or may not be best run, but yeah, top couple of top PSU engines in companies in India, and you look at their compounding, it would be anywhere between minus 10% to plus 10% over the last 10 years. Minus 10% to plus 10% over the last 10 years. Clearly, not a very enthusiastic number when one is looking at exploring them from a long term perspective. So not see what happened is that 10 years back PSU banks was I think where we start. I mean, this question arose 10 years back. PSU banks had 90% market share. Today they have 70% market share. 5 years, 6 years later, they will have 50% market share. And believe me, 10 years later, it will be the other way around, where they will be left with 30% market share. That's what has happened and will continue to happen. That's the trend, and it's gone a step ahead, and it's earlier, the share of top five or top six private banks in that 30% was less than 50%. It has already gone up to 70%. So that is where the trend is. That is where the idea is of getting bigger, strong getting stronger. So I'm afraid I'm not a big proponent of a PSU bank stock at this stage.
Our value investor Tushar has specially requested this question. You mentioned about a very interesting quote from Peter Lynch on market corrections. If you can just please highlight and throw more clarity on that quote.
Okay, yeah, fair point. So let's take an example. So there are two investors. Like let's say there are two kind of investors, and what I'm referring to will be more relevant for a category 2 investor, right? But let's take category 1. So category 1 investor was who was 100% invested, right? In March. His portfolio declined, assuming a beta of 1, his portfolio became from 100 to 60. 40% fall in Nifty, 40% fall in his portfolio, right? 100 became 60. Now uh, what was his choice, right? Choice number one was he could have exited 60. He could have sold off some of the stocks, and that 60 would have become 40 because he was anxious, he was nervous, he got frightened. And if he had sold, that 40 would have become at best 50% of it would have been up to 60. Still, he would be down 40% from the top. He did not gain anything, he lost big time, right? On the contrary, option number 2 was he could have not sold that, right? And patiently waited, right? So his 60 would have been a much bigger number, right? Which is like 80, 85, right? And option number 3 was he could have used that to his advantage, and plowed in more money and kind of averaged out, and it would have been a far better number. So the idea was to instead of waiting for a further correction, right? It would have been prudent to use that. Obviously, you're not gonna get the bottom, but at every fall, if one was using it to his advantage, one would have kind of averaged out the cost and would have been in a far better position than if one was trying to anticipate correction ki 100 का 80 हो गया है और नीचे जाएगा, fine, it went further 70 और जाएगा, it went to 60. Even at 60, the assumption was it'll go further, but it didn't go down further, right? That is where at some level it stops, right? It's not that, I mean, it's falling from the sky and it'll come down straight to zero, right? There has to be a bottom, right? And that is exactly 7,500 Nifty where it stopped. So instead of trying to anticipate and trying to time it and get that perfect number, see, nobody had that clue that market would fall from 11,500 to 7,500. Nobody means nobody, right? So if one was looking at a perfect number to get in all the money, that was trying to be foolhardy. So that is example one. Example two was people. I mean, a person who was new to the market and who had employed, maybe just instead of 100 rupee, he had only put in maybe 10 or 20 or 30 and wanted to put the balance 70, and he again was waiting for a correction. So there were comparisons being made between 2008 and now, that in 2008 we had multiple downslides, multiple crashes, and whenever in the market, once the market pulled up from 7,500 to 9,500, there were these theories that the market will go back again to from 9,500, 10,000 back to 8,000. Therefore, nobody had that courage to deploy. And finally, almost all of them have now entered the market after 10,000, 10,500. So what Peter Lynch says is there's just no point trying to anticipate corrections, and you would lose much more in that trying to anticipate, rather than in that just. So in the last 4 months, more money would have been lost as an opportunity loss than would have been lost in 40 days in that crash of Feb 13 to March 23rd. That's the broad point he's making. And believe me, he's over 75 years. He's seen 5 or 6 big crashes globally and in US, and you can see the amount of white hair he has. So let's kind of draw a lesson from what he's saying, and let's not use or spend 20-25 years before we start deploying the same thing what he's been what he's learned in the last 75 years.
I know, Jaspreet, you mentioned this during your presentation, but just for the simplicity of a value investor, Venkata, he wants to know that if there is a correction, firstly, what is the probability of having a market correction? Secondly, if there is a correction, what should an investor do during such times?
Yeah. Would there be a correction? That was question number one. And if were there to be one, what should one do? Yeah, so as I said, we've been waiting for a correction for 3 months now. Yeah, but as unlock happened, as liquidity got pumped in, as people, as in the stock market participants, economic participants started looking at beyond beyond the current fiscal year, beyond the pandemic year, right? As there was progress in terms of vaccine and the cure, right? And as people stopped getting disturbed or perturbed by the virus. uh, this is that once that fear was out from us, from our minds, that is where the market stopped, started giving that signal that that correction may not come. So you can easily imagine, right? I mean, easily you will correlate with me when I say the fear that was there in end of March, end of April, and early May, and the fear that we have now, it has clearly abated big time, right? So again, no point correction. Yeah, most welcome. We would love it, because that is where we would 90% of the market would want to latch onto it. But as I explained in one of our previous slide, um, uh, we don't see our worst case, if you ask me, would be 10,000 Nifty. Therefore, any zone which is starting from the current number to as low as 500 or 600 or 1,000 points lower, one can start putting in incremental money. So 11,500 to 10,500 would be the zone in which we would recommend to build up the portfolio. Again, it depends on the risk appetite. One may want to deploy 60, 70, 80% in that, and maybe wait for that, just have that last 20% for just in case there is a correction beyond that. So that's how I would like to position myself. And as I said, it's again beyond a point, it's futile to look at Nifty. Please look at stock specific. If that stock of your choice has is in a comfortable zone where you would like to own it, please use that opportunity to buy, rather than looking at Nifty. It just doesn't make sense. 50 stocks out of Nifty, the top 15 are giving a picture that the Nifty is at 13,500. The last 35 are giving a picture that the index is at 7,500. We are exactly in between. So I mean, it's just a very concentrated view that Nifty gives, because of that top 10 stocks having a weightage of more than 60%. So beyond a point, doesn't make sense to look at Nifty. Look at individual stocks when they come in your buy zone. If you're happy to own it, own them for the next 2 to 3 years. Please go out and buy it. Maybe use staggered buying approach, if just in case, if you think that the market will correct more than what I'm saying, which is 11,500 to 10,500, which is our comfort zone.
Uh, just please, we have one more question from Pradeep and Yogesh. Somehow the economy forecast, or I would say the health of the economy, does not seem to be aligned with the stock market rally. What is your view on the same? And do you think is there really a disconnect between the health of the economy and the stock markets?
So there are two things here. One, this would have been true. True in the sense that it would have been the topic of discussion in April, and also in till about end of May. It may have had some merit. Now it just doesn't, right? And I'll tell you why. Because you look at the Nifty EPS, we were looking at upwards of 20% decline, went down to about 12 to 15% EPS decline in the current financial year. Now we're talking of less than 8% EPS decline. GDP degrowth was talked about 8, 9, 10%. Now we're looking at less than 5% GDP decline, right? So it is just that phase of uncertainty, ambiguity, which market doesn't like, and therefore that disconnect. So that's point number one. The fear of a degrowth being much sharper was, as clearly we are clearly behind that. That's point number one. Point number two is, which is also relevant and for people who doing investing with the long term is we no longer be looking at FY21. If you're investing, please look at FY22 from that perspective. Once everything normalizes, we're gonna see a sharp bounce back in earnings. It could be 10%, it could be 30%, it could be 40, 50% on a company to company, sector to sector. On that basis, there should not be a disconnect. And obviously, there is this underlying assumption or a positive or optimistic scenario, a realistic scenario in current situation where that there is a vaccine and the pandemic will settle down before December 2020. So with that, no reason why one should have that feeling that there is a disconnect between the economy and the way the market is behaving.
We have a lot of questions floating in, so maybe I'll take the last question for today's session, which is we are looking kind of even a rally in the theater stocks. So what do you think is the reason behind the same?
Sorry, in the what?
Stocks such as PVR.
Multiplex stocks, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just use that and club it with what I call which is ultra discretionary spend, which is where you have high-end entertainment, holiday, vacationing, hotels, right? Entertainment, jewelry, and including multiplex. So that's not that's only one segment. So if I multiplex obviously should bounce back much earlier and sharper. Because in terms of than the other ones that I mentioned, that obviously can get pushed to 2021, the other ultra discretionary. But multiplex is something our senses should bounce back post Diwali. There are multiple reasons for that. One is if shoppers can get the comfort that they can go to a mall and taking all precautions, they can shop, right? And which is happening. The footfalls in the malls is anywhere between 40 to 50% as we speak today of what they were earlier. If they have that confidence, and the same can be given by a multiplex owner. No reason why people will not go to a multiplex. Obviously, the occupancy rate would be less than half to start with, and obviously will only improve over a period of time. The ticket prices, again, it's not something that you would for a family of four. Going to a multiplex on a once in a month would cost between, depending on city to city, between 1,000 rupees to 2,000 rupees. So that, if you want to keep in perspective that people may not have gone to a multiplex in the last 6 months, may not mean much. So chances of a multiplex bouncing back, post October is very, very high. And there are as I understand, there are enough blockbusters or big release movies which are lined up post Dussehra. That obviously will also attract crowds, because those movies were made for big theater viewing and not OTT platform. So there would be enough reason. I'm not saying August, I'm not saying October. What I'm saying is starting October, post Dussehra, there will be enough reasons why space like multiplex should start seeing some traction, and maybe by November and December things could be as close to normal as possible. Once that fear psychosis, it's there at the back of your mind and not the front of your mind.
I already said that I'm going to take one last question, but since I have one more question that I think even other investors may have, so I would like to make this as an exception and ask one more question, which is, do you think the markets are driven by fundamentals, or is it purely due to liquidity?
Yeah, I mean that's what we discussed in our June webinar, and would highly recommend our audience to go to our website and watch that. So what we said is the market is driven by three things: liquidity, sentiment, and earnings. It was it was the phase till February, Feb 19 to Feb 20, when earnings was driving it. Between Feb to April, it was sentiment. Just because of sentiment, it just crashed. Between April to till date, it is. I mean, April till June, it was liquidity plus sentiment which pulled it back. And now in the last 2 months, I would say it is the liquidity factor is coming off, and it is more of sentiment and earnings which are driving it. So I would say, I mean, if I were to put it, month of May could be liquidity, the month of June could be sentiment, and month of July and August it's earnings, which is kind of pulling back the market. So at any point of time, it's that mix of all these three. There are months when one overtakes the other, and it just that overrides it. But it's that concoction of these three things which are responsible of market moving at any point of time. At this stage, our sense is, in fact, now and going forward, it would be more of earnings followed by sentiment followed by liquidity, which will keep the market afloat and buoyant.
Thank you, Jaspreet, for answering the questions. And I believe we hope that today's webinar may help you to devise an investment strategy for long term. Thank you all for joining us and giving your precious time for this webinar. We'll stay updated. We'll keep you updated with all the market developments. So don't forget to read our emails that we keep on sharing you on a daily basis. Once again, thank you for giving time to us today.
Thank you.